As kids on the internet, we watch all kinds of shows. Maybe you like animation versus animator, or maybe you're like me and like shows like Cam Camp, BFDI, in Red vs. Blue, or Starters. I watched that one back in 6th grade, and before I rewatched it recently, it was just another one of those shows I saw as a kid that I didn't think about much. It didn't stick with me, I didn't get it, and I didn't find it that funny, and I was never a fan of Pokemon. Even nowadays, I heavily prefer Palworld, don't sue me. But rewatching Starters made me realize that this series, despite only one person voice acting everyone and it looking like South Park, is incredible. It's so good that I'd call it one of the best web cartoons compared to everything I've seen so far. But since Starters is pretty old, it didn't get that big, there hasn't been a new episode in the last 6 years, and I'm not even sure if it has a fan base anymore. I think that it's important to give a general overview as to what it is. Starters is a South Park inspired Pokemon fanfiction series that started in 2013 with Little Disaster by a YouTuber named Movie Unleashers, though he began work on that initially in 2011 when he was around 13 years old. In it, we follow the events of 2 groups of 3 starter Pokemon that go through different, completely absurd and insane events as Movie Unleashers consistently uses pre-established world-building related things within the original world of Pokemon to make unique and interesting arcs or plots within his world. He gets really creative with what Pokemon gives us, but for example in Wild Oranberries, he spins the original world building fact that in Pokemon there are of course wild Pokemon, by having a wild Turtwig become civilized at an impossibly fast degree, which implies that most Pokemon like Chespin became civil at some point, while others like Turtwig, which is usually civil, never got the chance to due to the circumstances in which he grew up. It does a lot of interesting things like this, which I'll get into later, but instead of how I usually do things, I'll give you a summary of directly what happens in each episode since they're pretty damn long. Then I'll speak on specific criticisms and positives I have for the episode. I'll start with Typomaniac and Rare Candy since they're directly related to each other. They're the most well-known episodes and honestly they're the best ones. Then I'll speak on Lavendertown and so on, but not Ditto Disaster since it's non-canon. Typomaniac Summary. Typomaniac and its direct sequel, Rare Candy, is why I think Starters is one of the best web series on the internet, period. But it's kinda crazy, so hear me out. We start with Blaziken interrogating Mudkip, who remains silent. Mudkip doesn't listen to him at all, and internally he thinks about motivation since he doesn't understand why the cop's trying to talk to him.
Motivation. There's that word I've come to love so much during my existence. And a word I probably don't even understand.
From there, we learn that he prides himself as a scientist that found out how to remove a Pokemon's element without killing them, and that he's a serial killer. He himself doesn't get why he does what he does, or why he's motivated to do anything. So from there we go back into the past, and the rest of the episode focuses on the main character, Fennekin. She wants to do something, so after talking to kids in the back of the school, or Chikorita's group, she ends up getting mad at Chikorita themselves and punching them in the face before she meets Chespin. Chespin's very talkative, positive, energetic, and a bit weird, so Chikorita's group doesn't like him. Afterwards, he and Fennekin talk to each other, which is where she gets introduced to Mudkip. Then Chespin asks her if she wants to hang out after school, which she accepts. As they're hanging out and getting to know each other, Fennekin feels like she has a little crush on Chespin, but since he's a grass type and she's a fire type, she freaks out and thinks that she's doing something wrong. She thinks she has to try and end things before it can even be a thing. So when she comes to school the next day, she wants to tell Chespin that they can't go out due to them being different types. As she's trying to find him, she asks Mudkip where he is, and Mudkip says he's hanging out with Chikorita's group. When Fennekin comes over, Chikorita makes fun of her and Chespin for being in love, which is weird to them due to the type difference, and that makes Fennekin extremely angry.
Nothing like that, you fuckwad! Wow! Wow!
Mudkip and Chespin tell her to calm down, but she doesn't, and she escalates the situation to the point that they end up beating up Chespin. So, out of anger, she burns Chikorita and their friends, but Chespin gets burnt too. She goes to the hospital, and before she checks on him, she imagines that everyone will hate her after they recover from what she did to them. Then she goes to check on Chespin. He stays super positive and forgives her, but she says sorry nonetheless and leaves, telling him to never try and contact her again since she's dangerous. After exiting, Mudkip immediately stops her, since he's mad about how she handled talking to Chespin. After Mudkip tells her not to end herself, since it'd be foolish,
I'm gonna kill myself. It doesn't matter. Everywhere I go, I cause harm.
Fennekin, why would you do something so foolish?
he says that he can take out her fire so that she can't hurt anyone else, while also saying that he knows why Fennekin came here, which was because she wanted to get away from a homicide she caused where she lived previously. Fennekin takes Mudkip's help, and the main reason why he wanted to help was so she and Chespin can be friends. After the surgery, Fennekin wakes up, so she's effectively a normal type and the first Pokemon to go through a type change. Then and there, Mudkip both makes her promise to not tell anyone how this happened, and he makes her promise to be Chespin's friend, both things that she accepts. Once she gets back home from this operation, she's been out for so long that the police are at Fennekin's house looking for her. Her mom and the Blaziken from earlier realize that her fire's out, so they bring her to a doctor, though she's fine. Since this kind of thing happening has never been seen in this world, since usually an element going out means death, a camera crew for TV comes in to interview her as the doctor claims that he's the one who discovered this. When she says, I don't know, like as in how it happened, everyone gives her positive attention, and due to her condition, she ends up becoming extremely popular and getting on TV. Chikorita and their friends see this and vow for vengeance before 2 weeks pass. Bulbasaur and Cyndaquil guess on how they think Fennekin lost her powers. Then Tepig comes in and says that Chespin knows. Chespin guesses that someone must have taken her fire out, and this rumor spreads around the school as if it's a fact because they were dating at one point, in the eyes of the school. Since she's so popular, everyone wants to be her friend, though Chespin eventually gets her attention, and that's when she tells him to forget about what she said at the hospital and that she wants to hang out. Squirtle butts in and causes an argument, which is when Chespin tells him that she had her fire taken out 2 weeks ago. This makes Fennekin freak out since his guess is exactly what happened, but when Squirtle presses her about it, her anger issues are triggered, so she attacks Squirtle and strikes Chespin. Lugia, the principal of the school, stops the fight and tells her that she needs to leave since she's an unknown breed of Pokemon. She gets scared and imagines everyone closing in on her and hides in a locker, then Mudkip opens it and says they need to talk. They have an uncomfortable conversation as Mudkip gets increasingly more agitated with Fennekin, and when she calls Chespin annoying, he cracks a little bit and starts defending him like crazy before telling her that the government wants to find her.
Chespin is not annoying. He's a very intelligent, outgoing, positive Pokemon. How dare you even put him in the same category as those things?
Mudkip says he ratted her out to them, and he tries to make her say who'd turn her into a normal type, but she doesn't. So Mudkip lies and says that she's the daughter of Arceus, which she uses to her advantage to get back to talking to Mudkip. He says that she broke the promise of being Chespin's friend, but she doesn't understand how, and he exposes her by basically telling her that she's a bad friend, but she never understands what Mudkip was really getting at. He then psychologically screws with her until she cries, and he tells her to shut up. Which is fucking crazy, by the way.
Shut up.
Chikorita's group sees this since Mudkip and Fennekin were talking where they usually hang out, and they heard everything. So they know that Mudkip took Fennekin's type out. He blames Fennekin for exposing his secret despite him saying it himself. Fennekin assumes Chikorita's group wants vengeance, but they don't, and they ask Mudkip for a change in their type too, which he's resistant to initially, but then he decides to agree. And he says that he'll put Fennekin's type back in too. Fennekin thinks it's suspicious, but she wants her type back, so she brings Chespin with her to go to Mudkip's house. Once Chikorita's group, Fennekin, and Chespin get to Mudkip's house, they go down into his lab and he puts everyone to sleep except Chespin. Mudkip tells Chespin that he's going to kill all of them because they're evil, and they're evil because they've been mean to him, though Chespin convinces Mudkip not to do that. He leaves Chikorita's group unharmed and untouched, and he puts Fennekin's type back in, and they all leave alive, and soon after, the police come and raid his house. This is when we cut back to the present with Mudkip in prison, still unable to understand why he did any of that, all because of the way that he thinks. Immediate thoughts. Despite a few plot points or moments that felt sorta weird, like the government thing going nowhere until we're candy at least, or Chikorita not wanting vengeance despite clearly vowing it earlier, I thought this was amazing because of its deep characterization and extremely complicated dialogue. I've now watched this 3 times, and a first watch of this just isn't enough to appreciate how good it actually is. But before I get into specifics, I think this episode best exemplifies an aspect of starters that's always creative and unpredictable that I don't think gets enough appreciation. Unique world building. I'll be praising general aspects of starters throughout the video, and one of the best is its world building. This is an obviously Pokemon based series, though every episode builds off of ideas from Pokemon and tackles them in interesting ways, given the differences starters introduces from Pokemon, like how, everyone can talk. But what do I mean by that? Well, for starters, in the original Pokemon, there seems to be nothing about them having cores that power each and every one of them and allows them to use their abilities. In starters though, this aspect of Pokemon is added onto since in here, everyone has a core, which is an extremely delicate and unknown field of Pokemon anatomy that, to our knowledge, only Mudkip has figured out. It's simple, but it's what allows for Typomaniac to even take place, but it also ties into one of the most interesting world building choices in the series, which is the integration of type advantages. In the actual Pokemon, as you probably know, some types are stronger or weaker than each other. That mechanic is translated in this when it comes to anything romantic as taboo or strange, which is relevant for Chespin and Fennekin's relationship, especially by Rare Candy. And even though on the surface it seems analogous to something like interracial relationships in real life, the massive difference there is the type advantage. Fennekin put Chespin in the hospital and almost killed him because Chespin is a grass type. Her being a fire type puts Chespin at risk because there's an extremely massive physical power imbalance, and so in that way it makes a lot of sense for this kind of thing to be a taboo. It reminds me of Beastars where, spoilers I guess, Ito, who's a predator, kills his girlfriend who's a prey by accident since predators are just that much stronger than prey. All a predator in Beastars has to do to kill prey animals is squeeze their head too hard on accident. And so the fear prey has of predators in Beastars, not to mention the ridiculous idea of a relationship between the two types of creatures, makes a lot of sense because of the physical power imbalance. It could just be me, but I always find dynamics like this in shows interesting because people thinking it's wrong for two characters like this to be together actually makes sense, and it creates a genuine hurdle in a possible relationship. Can they overcome it, or do they decide it's better to split up and not hurt each other? These are just two examples out of a lot of how Dane adds on to Pokemon in creative ways in order to make this series feel like something entirely different and unique. And hey, it's just an aspect of why I think Stardust as a whole is so good. I could go on for quite a while as to why I like the series so much, but I think it'd make the most sense to speak on the highest quality aspect of the entire show. One that makes every presentational weakness, like the art or voice acting, not matter. The character writing. Fennekin. Fennekin's easily one of my favorite characters ever because of her subtle characterization and complexity. Each and every word used in Typomaniac is useful as it gives a lot of insight into who she is, and honestly, it paints such a tragic picture, better than I understood on even a second watch and heavy reflection on what it was trying to communicate. But I'll be using 3 specific examples to show off who Fennekin really is the best. The one with her and Chespin in the hospital, the one where Fennekin insults Chespin's bullies, and the conversation between her and Mudkip where she calls Chespin annoying with a few extra scenes to bring home my observations.
Fennekin? Hi! Come over here! Wow, I'm so happy to see you! Look at me all burned up, look like a total badass, like an action hero or something. Oh, Fennekin, I'm fine. Stuff like this happens all the time. I'm so sorry. Don't let that bring you down. There's not that much damage. Even the others are okay. Be sure to apologize to them, too. Yeah. I got a week or 2 here, and after that, I'll be as good as new. Then we can go out some more. Oh, yeah, you wanted to say something back at the school. What was it?
Well, it's nothing really.
Oh, come on, it's all good.
It's too late.
Oh. Did it have to do with your fire? Fennekin, it's fine. Everybody's got their quirks. And hey, you were protecting me. They could have beaten me up to a pulp. I would have been set here anyways. Oh, Fennekin, please don't cry. I'm sorry. I don't want this to happen again. I pushed them to fight you. And then I flared up. I have anger issues. No, you can control it. I'll do research. I'll help you. Nothing's helped at all. Well, if you looked on the positive side of everything, I've done enough damage. Fennekin, are you listening? I'm fine. I could have killed you. Yeah, but you didn't. This isn't the first time something like this has happened. Everywhere I go, it's like, oh, it's not as bad though. Oh man, Fennekin. Oh, I want to hug you so bad.
You know, Chespin, there is a problem with different types having a relationship together. There's a possibility that one can hurt the other.
Fennekin, don't leave me.
Chespin, stay in bed. Don't worry about me. Please forget about me. We're technically strangers. We met like yesterday.
Don't worry too much. You'll never see me ever again. Fennekin?
This scene with her and Chespin is just horrible, and it's hard to really get why on an initial watch. He's hurt horribly due to what she did to him, and because of how Chespin is, he forgives her immediately. but all she can say is sorry despite that. Chespin wants to know about what she's going to say earlier, since before she burned him on accident, she intended to tell Chespin something, and instead of trying to comfort Chespin or worrying about him, she begins crying about what she did despite Chespin, the victim of her attack, being right in front of her. In fact, note how she never makes a real attempt to comfort or even listen to Chespin, and even Chespin notices this when he says, "Fennekin, are you listening? I'm fine." But again, seemingly without noticing, she pities herself and cries because of what she did for herself. Another horrible scene that adds on to this aspect of her is when after Mudkip tells her that her anger will never go away.
Both of us had third-degree burns. And you know, that hurts, man. Yeah. It's not cool making fun of us. We've got it hard. And you got your little life where everything is handed to you.
I didn't deserve any of it, though. They just handed it to me. I didn't want it. To be honest, I don't even think I deserved anything in life. All I did was cause pain and misery. I don't deserve anything. The only thing I'll ever deserve is whatever you're going to do to me.
Chikorita opens up to Fennekin about how making fun of them isn't cool because of what they went through, and also about how it hurt to get those third-degree burns, because they're also victims of what Fennekin did. But Fennekin just says yeah, and like with Chespin, begins feeling bad for herself instead of being truly sorrowful for what she did to Chikorita because she hurt them. When she cries, it's for herself. She feels bad for herself and thinking about the consequences of what could happen to her and not the real harm she caused to others, which is something we see in the scene where she imagines Chikorita throwing her into the lake. The only one that doesn't feel for her is Mudkip, which totally catches her off guard, though I'll speak on this more in depth with how it relates to her later.
Crossbreeding at a school? Like, that's disgusting.
Nothing like that, you fuckwad!
Wow! Wow! Oh, Fennekin, calm down. It's just a joke.
Wipe that smile off your face right now. It isn't funny.
There's no need to get defensive. That's exactly what they want.
Well, if they want it, they're gonna get it right in the fucking mouth.
Fennekin, I'm sorry. We don't mean any trouble or harm. We're gonna go now.
It might seem like this one's just Fennekin getting mad for a good reason, but it's deeper than that because both Chespin and Mudkip tell her multiple times not to escalate things. Chespin desperately does not want conflict, and Mudkip says that getting mad is what they want, but she just gets mad anyway. If she had taken their words seriously, then the entirety of Typomaniac wouldn't have even happened, but it does because she doesn't really care about what others have to say or their inputs. If Fennekin thinks that doing something in the moment is right, or if it feels right, or if it's guided by anger, then she'll always let that win out every single time over what others think. And what makes it worse is that she says she wants to change, but if anything, an incident like this should have been the catalyst for one due to her almost killing 3 people. But it's not. Even after she loses her type, when she gets pressed by Squirtle, she ends up punching Chespin and choking Squirtle out. It's been 2 weeks since that point, and if she really wanted change, wouldn't you think that she would have tried to dial it back, or she would have found some way to think about how to deal with these situations that anger her? But the fact of the matter is that Fennekin says she wants change, but she doesn't. It's also why she totally ignores when Chespin says that he'll help her with her anger issues and do research. She doesn't really care because she'd rather pity herself and not improve this flaw in who she is.
Tell me what's wrong.
I don't know. Why is everybody so fucking annoying?
Yep.
Nobody cares on who I am. They just like me because I'm famous.
And you're sucking it in like the little bitch you are.
Hey, what?
You say everybody's annoying. Even Chespin?
Well, yeah, all he cared about is how I got this way.
No, you're not. You're lying.
No, I'm not lying.
Chespin is not annoying. He's a very intelligent, outgoing, positive Pokemon. How dare you even put him in the same category as those things?
You barely even talk to him.
Oh, believe me, Chespin and I exchange in conversations all the time. You're just too busy playing it off to the stupid paparazzis.
You really want me to snap and tell the truth, don't you?
Well, if you already broke the promise with Chespin, why don't you go for 2?
I didn't break any of your promises. Chespin will forgive me.
Really? From your assumption, Chespin is stupid and gullible. when he's the only one that actually guessed correctly.
This one hits you powerfully because each and every time before and after, her crying worked on everyone. She got Chespin to try and comfort her despite him being her victim, and Chikorita's group felt bad for her after she started crying because it seemed messed up. But because of how Mudkip is, he flatly sees her as sucking up to the popularity she gained due to her type change. And what cements her emotions as basically fake is when in that scene, she doesn't react to more crying, total shock, anger, or more self-pitying. She instead just says, "Hey, what?" Because her emotions here and in previous scenes served a purpose that is ineffective on Mudkip. Yet, I don't think that her doing all of this is intentional because she can't self-reflect. When Mudkip tells her that she broke the promise she made to him about being Chespin's friend, she doesn't even get how she did it. It's cause she was focused on being on TV and gaining popularity and fame for a little while instead of at least visiting Chespin often in a hospital over the course of his recovery like how an actual friend would do. That's how she broke the promise, because she doesn't truly respect Chespin. She calls him annoying and knows that he'll always forgive her for anything, so even though it isn't an expected or common way of walking all over someone, that's what she does to him. With everything laid out like this, it lets us realize that even though Mudkip is evil, he's right.
Fennekin's alright. She just got anger issues.
Fennekin, what a manipulative, self-centered bitch. She comes to you in the hospital, whining about herself, ruining your good mood, and then, what, leaves? She fucking leaves? And then when she comes back, she punches you in the face. She's no better than those worthless druggies.
She is self-centered, manipulative, and internally unwilling to change, yet she's not self-aware or smart enough to truly see her flaws. She thinks that she just has anger issues and that's it. The key part of why she works so well as a protagonist despite being so horrible is precisely because she's not self-aware enough to realize these flaws. She just lives it out, and her not doing this maliciously still allows for you to have reasonable empathy for her. She makes sad situations in front of her victims about herself. She doesn't even understand how she broke the promises to Chespin, or that she really sees him in the same way as everyone else, and she never thinks about anyone but herself. But I think that the best thing about her is that the manipulation works on the audience, because it's portrayed flatly, and everyone aside from the literal serial killer villain feels bad for her. Nothing in the show implies anything about the character of Fennekin, whether you should like her or not, so when Mudkip exposes her for being a terrible person, it feels cruel. But after a few rewatches, you get what he's getting at. Fennekin is not only a deep character, but she's an incredibly well executed one that I've been thinking about for days after finishing Typomaniac for the third time, because I haven't seen one like this in anything I watched so far. She alone makes Typomaniac worth checking out if you haven't already. Mudkip. Mudkip says the least, but he's the most impactful character. Despite that, I'd say he's passive and reactive. He only makes two major actions, those being the taking of Fennekin's type, and then the reinstating of it after letting her and Chikorita's group go. Most of the things that happen are because of reactions that other characters make to those two actions, but he himself during all of that doesn't do much. Which is why I say he's passive. And we learn about Mudkip's biggest part of his character, the fact that he's emotionally deficient. We understand this through his motivations, which are the reason he even makes those two actions, what he actually does, and how he self-reflects. For clarification's sake, being emotionally deficient doesn't mean he has no emotions. By the end, he's still trying to justify what he does as good or okay because it's for science or because the Pokemon he kills are evil.
I'm not mean, I'm the good guy.
But throughout the episode, he shows an absurd lack of empathy even towards itself. Chespin asked,
How would you feel if someone killed you?
I'd feel dead.
Mudkip saying, I'd feel dead is a funny scene, but it communicates to us that there's something seriously wrong with how he thinks. He mentally can't entertain or understand the idea of being in somebody else's shoes, even in the situation of someone who has to go through losing a loved one, as Chespin gives examples of. And because of his hatred of the world, since he thinks it's a dark and evil place, he ends up looking at Chespin as the only light within it due to Chespin being his only friend and being nice. Notice how the Pokemon that are evil never actually do anything to inconvenience Mudkip. And notice how Mudkip's reasoning for doing basically everything in the episode somehow wraps back around to dealing with Chespin. Like how he only removes Fennekin's core so that she can stay friends with Chespin, even though he really doesn't like her. So due to his emotional deficiency, he just can't connect the dots and realize himself that his motivations are mostly for Chespin's sake, and after a few rewatches, this just feels obvious. And this isn't a regular friendship that Mudkip just cherishes. I mean, he literally kills people for being mean to Chespin. No, this is some form of idolization. Mudkip can see all the flaws in Fennekin, with her being self-centered, manipulative, and a jerk, but he never can with Chespin. There's no point where he tells Chespin to maybe try defending himself, or that being so nice all the time isn't good since it lets people walk all over him. He only points out the flaws in others because he thinks that Chespin is perfect to the point that he feels as if he can't function if he'd lose him, which is why he tries to manipulate Chespin by telling him that he'd end himself if anyone found out about his secret.
Oh, so then when I set you all free, you could turn around and backstab me, phone the police, and get me hauled off to prison. Now, if that ever happened, I would kill myself. Would you really want that, Chespin? Knowing you drove your only friend to suicide?
You know, Mudkip, if you were my friend, you wouldn't make me feel guilty all the time.
Mudkip's shockingly complicated despite his little amount of dialogue, as he can't understand or interpret his or other people's emotions outside of manipulation. But Dane made him far more unique than someone who just doesn't feel emotions, because all of his motivations and goals are emotional and not logical. Logically, he should have killed Chespin at the bottom, and if he was emotionless, then he probably wouldn't have even known or cared about him. But that's not how he is, because Mudkip to a certain degree is as emotional as everyone else. And despite him being a serial killer, his ties to Chespin and his complexity make it difficult not to feel for him, so you never want to hate him, but you can't reasonably cheer for him. Chespin. He's a core tie between Mudkip and Fennekin, since a lot of what they do is dependent on him. Chespin's a bit of a weird kid who has a hard time fitting in due to him being very talkative, overly positive, and extremely forgiving, as he always tries to see the best in every situation. Because of that, a lot of people, including Fennekin, think that he's dumb, and they use it to manipulate and walk all over him since he's so conflict averse. It's why Chikorita's group makes fun of him and he doesn't do anything about it, for example. And it's why even when he deserves to be mad or feel bad about something, he just doesn't. In the bed, after he got the 3rd-degree burns for Fennekin, his takeaway was that he would have been sent there anyway and that Fennekin did it to protect him. But with his expression when he sees that Fennekin wasn't hearing what he was saying, it's clear that he's suppressing his true feelings, despite it being fine and honestly fair to be mad about having 2 weeks of life taken away from you by a friend that caused you to be put in this situation. And then that same friend doesn't even listen to what you have to say when she comes to see you. Post-recovery, he doesn't even feel a way about Fennekin prioritizing being on TV as opposed to checking up on him either. For all we know, Chespin just sat alone in his hospital bed for 2 weeks with maybe some family visits and frequent ones from Mudkip, since Mudkip was outside the hall when Fennekin came out. And because of how Chespin is, his relationship with Mudkip is so much more interesting since they're practically opposites. Mudkip and him are weirdly smart, but he's highly logical and pessimistic, while Chespin is overly optimistic and emotional. It makes sense as to why they care a lot about each other, even though Mudkip obviously goes way too far with his idolization of Chespin. He's not perfect by any means though, as like I was talking about earlier with Mudkip not mentioning any of his flaws, he has some pretty notable ones. The biggest one of course being that he should stand up for himself, and honestly the guy should learn how to read a room. If drug addicted people in a back alley are telling you to leave because they don't like you, there's probably not any intellectual conversation you could have there and you should just go. And he moves way too quickly with Fennekin. They met and hung out on day 1 once, and then on day 2, Chespin called her his girlfriend, which he'd rather not be due to the type difference. He's certainly not the most complicated character since that go to Fennekin or Mudkip, or at least yet, but he is an effective and still solid one that's extremely memorable because of who he is. Typomaniac Conclusion. Typomaniac has great characterization. It makes you forget that this series was made by an at the time teenager with Pokemon characters in a South Park style, and not some unique character-driven series dealing with the murder of teens and body modification. Though about that, one aspect that I dislike about Typomaniac and more so its sequel, Rare Candy, is that these characters feel weird as elementary school kids. Mudkip's an emotionally deficient scientist that figured out something about Pokemon anatomy that nobody knows about, alone, and Fennekin's a self-centered, violent person who moved away from where she previously lived because she killed somebody by accident. These both sound like adult to teenage characters, by description at least, and the only one that really feels like a kid is Chespin. If this either took place on a college campus or in high school with some teenage characters, then the complexity and their dialogue would have made a lot more sense, not to mention scenes like Chikorita's group doing drugs in the back of the school. These are 10 to 11-year-old elementary kids, and imagining them as such is ridiculous in a bad way that obviously wasn't intended. It's not a big issue in episodes like Out in the Rain, Oranberries, or Lavendertown because those child characters actually feel like children, and for the most part, they're far less serious, and it isn't the biggest issue in the world, but it is something I noticed and felt was noteworthy enough to mention. Also, I get that if they weren't first evolutions, then they wouldn't feel like starters, or be as recognizable, but still. Rare Candy. This is the second part to Typomaniac, and though it tells you to watch Out in the Rain before this, you don't have to. The only thing you'd miss from Out in the Rain is that Tepig moves in with Chespin. The characterization in this one is even better, most notably for Chespin, as he gains a level of depth you couldn't expect. And even the simple villain of the episode, Dr. Sylveon, comes in and basically becomes a fan favorite for obvious reasons if you saw it.
Chespin's head is going over the fucking wall! No!
But since I'm assuming you didn't, or you just need a refresher, here's a summary as to what happens. Rare Candy Summary. We open with multiple Pokemon with their chests exploded surrounded by candy. Then we see the main villain, Dr. Sylveon, explaining that rare candy can explode people's elements, which blows their chest up, and that they need Mudkip in order to save these people. But since he won't speak, they decided they need to use Chespin in order to make Mudkip speak. After that, we cut to Fennekin and Chespin hanging out, and once they talk about evolving since they can't watch the movie due to not being adults, they just go to Chespin's house. There, Fennekin tells Chespin that she doesn't want to date him even though he thought they were already dating by this point, which bothers Chespin. So he goes to Mudkip for advice. Mudkip tells him to ditch her because she's stringing him along, but Chespin's trying to be hopeful about it since he thinks that it could work later when they both evolve. But Mudkip softly tells him that his second evolution looks embarrassing. Blaziken after that brings him into a room to show Chespin the effects of rare candy and that he needs to talk to Mudkip soon about this. And then he sees the second evolution and feels bad because Blaziken says it's hilarious.
Hey, isn't that your second evolution?
Yeah?
Hilarious.
We cut back to Fennekin and she's hanging out with Chikorita, which is when Chikorita's friends come over with some rare candy. She takes some because she wants to get to her second evolution, and she goes to Chespin about it because she wants them both to evolve. But they argue since Chespin doesn't want to evolve early or use rare candy since it's dangerous, and he walks back to tell Mudkip about it since again it's bothering him. Mudkip knows it's screwing with him, but he tries to keep it positive, which just isn't working. Then he admits that he was the one to actually turn Mudkip in, which has him feeling betrayed because they're extremely close friends.
I decided to turn you in.
What?
Sorry, this is a little sudden. It had to come out one day. I'm sorry about that. But I just have to say that it was the right thing to do.
Why? I thought we were the best of friends.
Chespin did it because he thought it was the right thing to do, but Mudkip can't believe that he actually did that to him, so he just leaves. That's when Sylveon and Blaziken decide that it's time to force Chespin to ask Mudkip questions. Momentarily we go to Fennekin, who actually takes the rare candy herself and evolves before going back to Chespin, who attempts to ask questions to Mudkip. Mudkip stays silent, so Sylveon gets annoyed and tells Chespin to get out, and since he doesn't, he ends up punching him in the face. He sees that gets a reaction to Mudkip, so out of desperation since people are dying, he escalates the situation by putting a gun to Chespin's head and threatening to blow his head off.
Do you want this to continue? Because it will. You know what? It will. It will. And it'll keep going on and on. I've gotten so desperate. I noticed that striking your friend have caused a reaction out of you. If that's what we need to do, that's what we're gonna do. Show us your secret, or Chespin's head is going over the fucking wall! No!
Which is one of the most iconic scenes in the entirety of Starters. Mudkip ends up saying fine, but since this is his only motive to help Sylveon, he says that he's gonna bring Chespin and wipe him out if he doesn't comply. But if he listens, then he'll let him free. Sylveon was just screwing with Mudkip though, because he ended up letting Chespin free so that he doesn't have to actually kill Chespin. Chespin says that's wrong because he lied, but Sylveon doesn't care, and when he goes home he ends up seeing Fennekin with her second evolution, which he can't believe because he didn't want her to do it, so he just leaves. Without Mudkip to talk to anymore, he talks to himself about how he's selfish for not supporting Fennekin's change, for losing his childhood and sadness, and his hatred for the idea of becoming anything like Mudkip. He still wants to be with her and decides that he has to do the same, so he ends up getting his hands on some rare candy after one of Chikorita's friends tells him where to get it. He goes to the back of the movies and finds Sylveon, and we learn that he sells rare candies to kids and basically anyone. He gives him rare candy for free, but he calls the police. Chespin pretends he's overdosing on the candy he bought, and he's brought into a room with bodies that Mudkip's supposed to work on. After Mudkip comes out, Chespin tells him that Sylveon's responsible for the rare candy trafficking, but he already knew. Mudkip's still pissed since Chespin betrayed him, even though Chespin wanted to break him out, but Mudkip singles down the reason for why he's here, being Fennekin.
Like Dr. Sylveon. He's responsible for the rare candy trafficking.
I know that. So glad you helped that guy out.
Look, I'm so sorry what happened.
Is that the only reason why you broke in here? To apologize?
I can help break you out.
I thought doing the wrong thing was against your moral code, though.
But they have no right to do this to you.
And what about the other Pokemon that have come in? I thought you were sympathetic for druggies. They'll die if I leave. Then that's on them. They should know how to do it on their own by now. You've demonstrated quite enough. I think they know how to do it. Why are you actually here, Chespin? Did it have to do with Fennekin? Okay, I was just trying to get out of trouble. I was caught with rare candies.
That makes Mudkip even more angry because Chespin will do the wrong thing for Fennekin, but not for Mudkip, his best friend. Which is when Mudkip rats him out by bringing Sylveon into the room. Mudkip asks for his freedom, which is when Sylveon pulls a gun out and puts it to his head, but Chespin tries to stop him, and that causes him to pick up a knife since he doesn't want his friend to die. But Sylveon ends up pushing him to put it down since he wasn't able to push himself to stab him. And to taunt him, Sylveon stabs him in the nose before Mudkip scolds him for not killing Sylveon since he's evil. He says that they'll both be stuck here and that his girlfriend's probably a Delphox by now due to being a rare candy addict, which are his final words as Sylveon executes him right in front of Chespin's face.
Why didn't you do it? You think this is good behavior to let this sickle get away with everything he's done? Just because you didn't want to hurt him? I can't! Oh my god, I was almost a fucking killer! I don't want to be a killer! I don't want to be a killer! I don't want to be that! You didn't have to. We could have just stunned him and then we could have escaped. We're gonna be both stuck in here now. No, you wanted me to do it! You were pushing me so close! You wanted me to do it! Would it matter if we stayed here anyways? Maybe your girlfriend will start to come in. Stop it! Yeah, isn't she a rare candy addict now? Stop it! She's probably a fucking Delphox. Don't take it personal. We were planning on killing him tonight anyways. Besides, he really wanted to end it. But he was my friend! It was my friend! Wait. You were actually friends with that serial killer? What the hell is wrong with you?
Chespin just goes home after that, and Fennekin checks on him, but he's unhappy about everything that happened, and he's worried about how his second evolution looks horrible, before beating himself up about how they couldn't ever get together because she wouldn't want him, and about Mudkip since he let him die because of his own inaction. Fennekin speaks about how he's lucky that he didn't stoop to her level before Chespin asked her to leave with,
I don't want to talk to you, I want to talk to Fennekin.
Tepig tries to comfort him because this is the first time Chespin's ever clearly felt horrible, and they talk about forgiveness, and that they need to be there for each other, which is when Chespin decides to say sorry to Fennekin since he thinks that she doesn't deserve to feel like he does. And that's where it ends. Immediate thoughts. I was moved by so many things in these two episodes, especially moments like Mudkip's death. I just had so many feelings that I didn't know how to articulate at the time on a first and even second watch, and it took me many hours of thought to even think of how I want to say on how I feel after watching this. But let's start simple with characterization again. Dr. Sylveon. Sylveon's an effective villain as his goal is just to maximize profits for both selling rare candies and controlling the way people can recover from overdoses. Nobody important knows he's doing this, and while this is extremely simple, it's great mostly due to his very erratic, unpredictable, and violent personality. Plus, there's absolutely no wiggle room for sympathizing with him because he's the most evil villain by far. At least Mudkip thought he was protecting and helping Chespin, and Jirachi later just wanted to grant wishes for fun at no cost. But Sylveon, he just wanted money and is willing to do anything. This is why I'd say he's memorable, not because of his complexity since there isn't any, but because of his actions. The guy puts a gun to Chespin's head and threatens to blow his brains on the wall, which is one of the most iconic moments in all of Starters since it's insane. And he's the person who kills Mudkip right in front of Chespin, triggering his total and complete breakdown. Him being so evil also makes Chespin's choice to spare him hurt even more. Chespin always did what he thought was right, and in this moment it would have been to stab Dr. Sylveon because he sells deadly drugs to children and is about to kill his best friend right in front of him. There's no good reason to keep him alive aside from Chespin not wanting to do the wrong thing, and his opposition to becoming anything like Mudkip. There's not much to analyze with Sylveon since he's simply evil, and while I think it'd be interesting if he didn't sell drugs in order to create a for the greater good situation, I think that what Movie Unleashers chose to do here is completely fine. I can't say the same about the next character though, who's anything but simple. Chespin. Chespin this time around is the most interesting character because of his character arc. Throughout Typomaniac, he tries his best to remain positive, but in Rare Candy, his attitude and general outlook on life is challenged by both Fennekin and Mudkip. Fennekin's practically the exact same, but she both leads him on and doesn't respect his wish when it comes to taking the Rare Candy, and she evolves prematurely. Chespin hated this because he was self-conscious of how his second evolution looked due to what Blaziken and Mudkip said about it. He believed that he would be ugly and Fennekin wouldn't like him, so he wanted to delay the evolution as much as possible. The reason why Fennekin's choice to become Braxian screws him so much is because he thought that she cared as much as he did about her thoughts. Though because of her evolution, he realizes that she doesn't, even though he's been basically always trying to make her happy and help her. This is where the second half of the reason as to why he changes so much comes in: Mudkip. Chespin cares a lot about Mudkip, but he currently wants to listen more to Fennekin because he has a crush on her that's not mutual.
I do care for you, even more than Fennekin. I didn't screw up your life, I'm just trying to fix it.
Mudkip always tries to tell Chespin how bad it is to chase Fennekin, and that she's bad for him because she's toxic, but he doesn't listen to him since he doesn't want to be like Mudkip due to him being so pessimistic. After Fennekin becomes Braxian via the Rare Candy, he tries to get some so that he can still be with her, even though it's clear that she doesn't care at all about his input or feelings, which is evident due to her choice to continue with obtaining her second evolution early. This leads to him meeting Mudkip in the first place, where he's being forced to do operations on Rare Candy victims, and his eventual watching of his execution, which he could have stopped if he stabbed Dr. Sylveon. Fennekin is indirectly the reason why he ends up seeing Mudkip's death, and so because of her and him not heeding Mudkip's warning, he realizes that Fennekin, this girl that he thought he was dating for a while, doesn't feel the same way and in all honesty is leading him on. And he ended up leading his best friend to death. A big part of this too is that Chespin's motivated by two things to act so positively. Those being that he wants to do what he believes is right, and so that he can keep his childhood. Chespin thinks it's right to try and preserve his childhood so that he doesn't grow up and become pessimistic like Mudkip, who he doesn't want to be anything like despite him caring a ton about him.
Oh no, Mudkip didn't like what I told him today! Whatever. He was trying to ruin our relationship anyways.
It was her decision to stuff out her childhood so easily. So get it together or you'll both be gone.
I'm not you! I'll never want to be like you!
And his want to do what's right led to Mudkip's death to Dr. Sylveon initially, since he's the one who turned him in. The most interesting thing about Rare Candy is that when all this is laid out, most of it is kind of Chespin's own fault. He didn't listen to Mudkip when he told him tons of time that Fennekin is toxic and bad for him, even though he was right.
You should just ditch her. I've been saying that since the beginning.
He thought it was right to turn Mudkip in, even though that's his best friend. And he thought it was wrong to stab Dr. Sylveon to at least stun him, as Mudkip said, because he didn't want to be a murderer like Fennekin, and he didn't want to be like Mudkip. That's why Chespin is such an interesting character. Practically all of this could have been avoided if he either never turned Mudkip in because he thought it was good, if he just listened to Mudkip since he was right about Fennekin, or even if he actually stabbed Dr. Sylveon, the guy who sells drugs to children and was preparing to murder his best friend. But Chespin losing everyone socially and going through all this bad is due to either his unwillingness to listen to those close to him or his inaction, and that's why I find his character development so interesting. And I like the decision movie Unleashers made with him to keep him practically the same as he was when the story started. He went through all of this and still decided to try his best to choose positivity, and he even tries to forgive Fennekin since he doesn't want her to feel bad. It's bittersweet since, like in many moments of Typomaniac, it makes sense for him just to lash out or be angry and not forgive Fennekin, or for him to quit the facade of being happy, as Mudkip basically says, but he doesn't and he still chooses positivity. Fennekin. Fennekin's practically static and it feels terrible, as her more toxic traits are even more obvious in Rare Candy. For one, it's obvious that she doesn't care at all about any of Chespin's inputs or personal opinions. She evolves despite Chespin not wanting her to do that, and that causes him to basically break down and decide that if he wants to continue trying and failing to date her, he has to follow suit, which leads him to witnessing his best friend's death. And when she evolves, she just walks up to Chespin at night and assumes that it'll be all cool since the heal forgive me mindset from Typomaniac is still there.
I didn't break any of your promises. Chespin will forgive me.
It's clear from this that she doesn't at all respect him and is abusing his kindness, just as everyone else does. But it gets worse. She leads him on multiple times without clarifying that they aren't dating until she just does out of the blue. She hangs out with Chespin's bullies despite apparently being friends with him, and for one of the worst moments that cements that she hasn't changed at all is the ending. When for the first time Chespin actually can't continue being positive and he truly breaks down, she doesn't really try to comfort or empathize with him. Just like in the horrible hospital scene from Typomaniac, when he's laying there, scarred and burned because of what she did to him, she ends up making it about herself. She pities herself and talks about how she wishes she had self-control, and in this situation, Chespin just doesn't listen to her.
No, Chespin, you did do the right thing. You didn't stoop to his level. You didn't even stoop to my level. You're so lucky you had self-control. I didn't have that. And now I just regret it all. Are you even listening to me?
I don't want to talk to you. I want to talk to Fennekin.
He realizes that Mudkip is right, and he tells her that he wants to talk to Fennekin because he's done. Chespin still is willing to forgive her by the end, but she doesn't deserve it. She's a bad friend through and through in both Rare Candy and Typomaniac, and she's still kind of my favorite. It was for the best that she wasn't changed, because I think that this makes her more effective since it feels more realistic. Why would she change when she hasn't had a real incentive to in either Typomaniac or here, because she feels as if there's no punishment or rebuttal from Chespin since he'll never offer one, and he never offers one. Without a reason to change, I think it makes so much more sense, because even in the end, she doesn't lose anything. Chespin and her are friends again, so it's pretty clear as to how this will go from here. Mudkip. It's incredible how the episode actually makes you feel bad for an empathyless serial killer who spends his last moments insulting his best friend, but it's able to do this for two reasons. For one, his tie to Chespin. When bad things happen to Mudkip, it's not only him who's affected, as Chespin cares a lot about him. It's why he comes in to see him every single day, and Chespin's an extremely nice and easy to empathize with character, since crap continually keeps happening to him throughout the episode. If Mudkip was alone, he'd just be a serial killer, and even his reactions to things like when he learns that Chespin turned him in make complete sense, even though he technically deserves to be put under a prison for his horrendous crimes. Chespin, his only and best friend who he literally murdered people for, turned him in. He was the only person that he truly trusted, and so it left Mudkip completely alone. It's a feeling so bad that, while it's still connected to Chespin, it allows you to feel for him and feel as if his reaction of silence to Chespin after he betrayed him feel fair. And what helps that is the fact that he doesn't totally hate Chespin after it. Dr. Sylveon still is able to use Chespin against Mudkip because Mudkip still cares a lot about him. The empathy you can feel for him in this situation, for the betrayal he went through, his care for Chespin, and ultimately his tie to him here are why the tie itself is so powerful and why you feel for Mudkip. And two is because he genuinely wants the best for Chespin. Despite being in prison, which he describes as basically the worst place ever, he does nothing but try to help Chespin. He doesn't say everything he says about Fennekin as an attempt to isolate Chespin and have him for himself or something. He genuinely sees massive flaws in her that are too large for him to push aside. He tries to help his friend because Fennekin's actually toxic, and Chespin just isn't seeing that, even though evidently, as we know, Fennekin is a horrible friend. And this view's even supported in Typomaniac because Mudkip removes Fennekin's type just so that they can hang out and to make Chespin happy, because that's what he wanted. Even at the very end, his final words are insulting towards Fennekin because Mudkip told Chespin many times to drop her, that she's toxic and a bad person, yet Chespin never actually listens to him. At the end, even the reason for why he's there is because Fennekin took a rare candy, and Chespin wanted to be like her in order to chase a relationship that's practically doomed to fail due to how Fennekin is. Plus, the reason why he's even motivated to do any of the work Dr. Sylveon tasks him with doing is because he believes that Dr. Sylveon is going to kill Chespin if he doesn't. Mudkip's still a reprehensible villain. I mean, the guy had a chamber where he burned the corpses of Pokemon after he did experiments on them. But despite that, because of who he is and what he does in the episode, he's surprisingly easy to empathize with. Rare Candy Conclusion. Rare Candy is just amazing. I think that Typomaniac is a bit deeper due to Fennekin's characterization and its neutral framing, but that doesn't at all mean that Rare Candy should be pushed to the side or not acknowledged for its interesting narrative choices and great characterization for Chespin, who was previously the simplest character in Typomaniac. As for the other parts where we focus on Tentacle's group, Starters takes a completely different vibe. While it's serious, it's less serious. It leans more into absurdity and comedy as opposed to very deep characterization or complex narrative arcs, and it favors more simple, straightforward stories that basically anyone could get on a first watch. What I'm saying is that generally there's less content to analyze, so how I tackle these sections will be different. Nonetheless, it makes the most sense to start with what's chronologically listed as the first episode of Starters. Though since that was a lot as a break, I want to take a second to share a verse from the Bible. Ephesians 2:10. For we are God's masterpiece. He has created us anew in Christ Jesus, so we can do the good things he planned for us long ago. Lavendertown, the Untold Story Summary. Describing directly what happens for the rest of these episodes will make you wonder, how is this not a comedy? But I'll explain, so don't worry. The first form starters, Tepig, Cyndaquil, and Bulbasaur, who are all friends, are taken by Cyndaquil's parents to Lavendertown for a vacation. Bulbasaur gets carsick though, and they stop at a gas station for some water. Then a Simipour who works there tells him that kids go missing in Lavendertown all the time, and he implies that they should turn back. The Typhlosions didn't know, but they didn't care, and they decided to vacation there anyway, just in a different spot. It's a crappy little house, and they tell the kids to stay there since it's dangerous, but they don't. Cyndaquil's group wants to go to Pink-Eyed Park because it's cool, but first they find a party which is hosted by Nidoking and Queen as celebration for their arrival. Bulbasaur is made uncomfortable by them, and that discomfort grows when Nidoking already knew Bulbasaur's name. After this, even Cyndaquil gets uncomfortable, but then they realize Tepig left before it comes back and tells him he found Pink-Eyed Park, an amusement park. They go there, but since Bulbasaur heard the Nidoking say
Cute children. Too bad ours wasn't like that. Yeah, at least she's out of her hair now.
he's even more disturbed. He tells his friends this, and they get disturbed too since nobody here has kids, though they don't think about it much. Bulb goes to the bathroom since he feels sick, but in there he meets Hypno, who hypnotizes him. Then, once he goes outside, he sees Lavendertown is totally destroyed as if it's like a Left 4 Dead 2 map or something. After Cyndaquil and Tepig went on the ride, they find Bulbasaur scared, so they help him, and they go over to this guy to call someone for help. But Bulbasaur can't hear him because he just sees him as dead. He's freaked out for the last time and runs away into the forest, and this is where he finds the orphanage. Nidoran opens the door and Bulbasaur asks if she's related to the Nidoking, but she says that they're dead. Then Hypno comes out and brings him inside. Bulb notices that every kid in the orphanage is on the missing children's list from Simipour's gas station, so he wants to leave. After one of the kids makes him some tea, Hypno pressures Bulbasaur into drinking it, before he jumps out of the window and runs away. And by the way, he didn't actually drink it. Bulb currently thinks that Hypno hypnotized the kids and him to see things that aren't there. Anyway, the Nidoking and Queen come to Cyndaquil's house and Bulbasaur comes by too. He tries to get them the ladder since they are put in the basement both to protect them and as punishment for losing Bulbasaur, but the Nidos tie Bulb to the back of their freaking car with a chain as they drive. Trust me, this episode gets weirder. At the same time of this, Cyndaquil's parents are driving home, so both the Nidos and the Typhlosion stop. Typhlosion, the dad, gets poisoned by the Nidoking and the mom gets got too, but then Hypno comes out of literally nowhere and tells the Nidos to let Bulbasaur go since he's a kid. They don't care, and we learn that Hypno started this whole little thing they're doing. And then the king smites his ass before they leave. But actually, Hypno didn't die. And when he wakes up, he finds the cabin Tepig and Cyndaquil are at. He falls down via the ladder, and he explains that in this town, everyone's a spirit, and they do a ritual where they sacrifice an innocent person every 2 weeks to keep the town intact. So actually, all the adults in the town are spirits and partaking in this to continue to exist, and in reality, Hypno's hypnotization is just to let people see Lavendertown for what it is in reality. We go back to Bulbasaur and the Nidos decide to kill him with Typhlosion's parents. Then we go to Cyndaquil and Tepig, who find the orphanage thanks to Hypno's directions, and they ask the kids for help. They gear up comically with literal guns and swords to fight ghosts. Once they're there, the kids see their parents and they change their mind by having a reunion with all of them, though Cyndaquil and Tepig use this as a distraction to save Bulbasaur and the Typhlosions. Nidoking hates this because the time for the ritual is almost up, so when Bulbasaur finds a car and drives away, the Nidos are right behind them. Hypno distracts them and sacrifices himself to save the kids, which is what makes Nidoking happy because he believes that he was able to complete the ritual with just seconds to spare. But Hypno actually says that he died all the way back when they smited him earlier. So then Nidoking's like, no! A massive hole to hell opens up, and our main group are barely saved by a rock formation in the ground. I'm not joking, you can see this on the screen. Nidorina calls for some help. They get out of the hole, Cyndaquil's parents make a full recovery, and we learn that Nidorina's apparently cursed, but we never see her again, so whatever. Immediate thoughts. On the first watch, I really enjoyed this episode, but on a second and even a simple refresher watch to make an accurate summary, and hell, even on the first watch of the entire series, I thought this was easily the second weakest episode, now to the point that I think it's the worst one. I gave a little hint for why that is, but I want to go into why the art style is fine. This show looks exactly like South Park, and it's even animated in the same way, despite the creator wanting you to take the whole series seriously aside from Ditto Disaster or Detective Pikachu. South Park's style is widely regarded as bad and cheap because characters don't even move their legs to walk, but it's fine for that because it's a purely comedic episodic series that isn't meant to be taken seriously. Plus, it never relies on high visual quality in order to tell jokes like the realistic stills from Ren and Stimpy or SpongeBob, as most of the jokes are dialogue or situation based. The visuals in South Park are just good enough for you to get what's going on, and any extra visual quality is unnecessary. So in Starters, a Pokemon fanfiction series that attempts to be serious with an art and animation style associated with purely comedy, then shouldn't there be a conflict? Even though it is bizarre, I'd say that in this instance it doesn't detract, since an art or animation style detracting or being a negative aspect of a cartoon depends on how well other elements are executed. 12 Ounce Mouse is one of the worst looking shows that I've ever seen by far, and I think that if it wanted to be a regular adult comedy like South Park, then the style would count as a sticking point or negative, since it's sometimes hard to even know what's going on. But because it's a weirdly slow-paced, unpredictable, and absurdist comedy, its lack of backgrounds and horrible animation with probably improvised dialogue actually combine to add on to the experience. While it's an upside in 12 Ounce Mouse, I think because of Starter's other aspects, the style is just fine. It tries to succeed at being grounded and realistic with its dialogue, and it takes itself seriously. The kids just feel like regular kids, and even for comedic parts like when Cynico's dad says,
Well, I'd rather do anything than mope around with you losers. Bye!
it just feels like a normal joke he'd make because of how he's characterized. Realistic dialogue, characterization, and tonal consistency is what keeps you focused on what's actually happening as opposed to this presentational aspect. And an added to the series is that there's barely any background music or silly sound effects. In fact, it uses all realistic sound effects or none at all, like when Nidoking stabs Cynico's dad's hand. The show never intentionally tries to be super funny or wild, it's just confident that you'd be able to take it seriously, which works out in its favor. And if it acknowledged that the art style was silly, then it'd be detracted because the creator just pointed towards one of its weaknesses, one of its biggest weaknesses, for a quick gag. With that confidence, you can take it seriously, get used to the art style, and enjoy the show. This is true for every single episode, even ones that are a little sillier, but I'd say Lavendertown is overall the worst out of them all because the story makes zero sense. It has great dialogue, pacing, and creepy moments like the T one, but everything's damaged by the fact that the story is totally nonsense, and I realized that I couldn't make any positive points about the story structure or the mysterious villain being executed well because it all crumbles logistically when you think about it. So those praises would have been poison. Trust me, there are a lot of issues, and even the creator Movie Unleashers himself in a video called Ranking My Animations says it's nonsensical.
Lavendertown. I would honestly put Lavendertown in S tier, honestly.
Like, but the story literally makes no sense. There's dead Pokemon that they can't see. I wrote it and I don't even know what I was writing.
But I'll highlight 3 things that either destroy main plot points or simply invite weird questions. First of all, the spirits as a whole, which is deep, so bear with me. Hypno's whole thing is that when he hypnotizes someone, he allows them to see Lavendertown in its actual state without any spiritual intrusion. This is what he explains to Tepig and Cyndaquil, and that's where we concretely learn that Lavendertown has no living people in it. Sounds fine until you think about when we met Nidorina. She said that she saw her parents get killed, but nothing implies that she knows that they're now spirits that partake in rituals to stay on Earth. Plus, given everything Hypno does before he explains the truth of Lavendertown to Cyndaquil and Tepig, you'd come to the same conclusion as Bulbasaur. So you think that it's Hypno making him and all the other kids see things that aren't there since he's using hypnotization and not some kind of anti-genjutsu technique. But this isn't the case, and since Hypno does stuff like stepping on Bulbasaur's head, it feels like the creator wanted to bring the story in another direction in the middle of writing this. On top of this, since Nidorina thinks nobody's in Lavendertown, then who do they think is doing the rituals? They know they're happening, and again, the kids didn't know about this, so do they think random people from other towns come by randomly to do rituals for some reason? Were Nidoking and Nidoqueen killed by the spirits of Lavendertown at some point too? But it also feels like the kids know since they gear up when Nidorina says to, and they treat this as if Lavendertown having ghosts isn't news to them. Also, what's up with Simipour? Is he a spirit? No, because he's fine after the spirits ran out of time to complete the ritual, and he doesn't partake. Does he live in Lavender? Well, no, because unless he's guilty of something, he probably would have been sacrificed. Maybe he lives somewhere else. But why work at a gas station near a town where children and people constantly go missing, in the middle of nowhere? And in the end, when Hypno sacrifices himself, can the spirits not tell if each other are real spirits? Are they affected by their own spiritual ritual? Second is Hypno just in general. Initially, he's a creepy villain, but by the end, he saves everyone. And this is a switch that feels really weird because it makes no sense. When we first see Hypno, he's touchy with a kid in a bathroom, tries to step on his head to quiet him down, and later when that kid comes to the orphanage where other kids call him Master,
Aaron, can you make us some tea, please?
Yes, Master.
he tries to pressure the kid into drinking tea. All this is suspicious and obviously communicates that he's a threat to kids and not that he actually means well. plus his general mannerisms are that of a creep's. All of this contradicts with who he ends up being, because him being a savior for children and also touching with children when nobody's looking just can't coexist in the same character coherently, and it can't be written off either. Kids calling this guy master after he freaking hypnotizes them can't be seen as anything but bad. On top of these things, Hypno's stated to have been the one who started the ritual.
Yeah, what happened, Hypno? You're the guy who started this thing.
But somehow Nidoking thinks that he's innocent and he's framed in this instance as being heroic by the end. Why would a good guy start a ritual where every fortnight an innocent person must be sacrificed or tortured so that the dead spirits of Lavendertown can stay there? If he cared about kids, wouldn't he, I don't know, not do that so they can stay with their parents? Instead, it kind of feels like a weird roundabout way for Hypno to have easy access to children since the spirits never sacrifice them, which makes him just look 10 times worse on top of everything. Third is the whole sacrificing people every fortnight. We'd have to think that it makes sense that enough people come here to meet that condition, and enough people don't know the rumors or legends about Lavendertown for this plot element to work. Obviously it doesn't, because as Semaphore said, like 5 kids go missing here daily in Lavendertown. Sure, Cynical's dad didn't know about that, but the story means to tell me that everyone doesn't? And why would people go to Lavendertown for any reason? It just seems like a random small town with nothing noteworthy aside from Pink-Eyed Park. I suppose that maybe the spirits can leave Lavendertown and find people to drag back and torture, but then why even do rituals in Lavendertown at that point? Why even stay in Lavendertown if you can do that? And besides, that can't be the case because the ritual only works for Lavendertown. There are a lot more logistical issues with this episode, but I'll keep it to these 3. Lavendertown Conclusion. It has good aspects, but none of them can be meaningfully delved into without acknowledging what I just acknowledged. It's also not trying to be as serious or as deep as the previous 2 episodes I broke down, Typomaniac and Rare Candy, so there's not much to analyze that can't be understood from watching the episode once or twice. Despite my issues, I suggest checking it out because I don't think it's bad, I just think it's extremely flawed. As for the next episode, it's way better and doesn't have any of these flaws. Out in the Rain. As I did with every single part though, I want to gloss over what generally happened in the story before I speak on its aspects. Out in the Rain Summary. Bear with me because holy crap, this is even more insane than the Lavendertown one. You'll see how. We immediately learn that legendary Pokemon are powerful, extremely rare, one of a kind, and if people see them, they should steer clear. Though Lugia, the teacher of the school, is a legendary, we learn that he put that all behind him. Then we get a scene of Tepig's home life. His dad's breaking stuff around the house, so he leaves to go to Cynico's house for the night, only for his dad to come by and drag him back home. His dad's abusive, so the next day we see that Tepig got hurt really badly by him, and he's done living like this. He tells his friend that he's going to move out and make a house in the forest. With his plans, he gets his friends, including Chespin, to help him build a house. They do, but it's pretty crappy, and his friends try to convince him not to stay there for the night since it's definitely not safe, but they fail to do this and Tepig stays. He prepares to leave since it's uncomfortable, but it rains and a tree falls on the house, which kills Tepig. Cynical and Bulbasaur notice it's storming and very windy outside, and for fire type, rain stings them, so it's not safe for them to go out for long periods of time during it. Bulbasaur goes to help Tepig, but he finds him dead. And once he gets back to Cyndaquil, they mourn his death. They're unsure as to what to do, but they decide to go to Tepig's dad, Emboar, and tell him that his son is dead, though Emboar says that he's fine. That same night, Cyndaquil asks if he can come over, and Bulbasaur immediately gets knocking on his door, and it's Tepig, because he's annoyed that his house got crushed. Bulbasaur obviously can't believe this. Cyndaquil also can't believe this, but Tepig is confused since he doesn't remember dying. He just remembers waking up outside of the house. So that's when they decide to go back to his house to see if the body's still there to prove that Tepig died, but his house is fixed. They go inside and find Jirachi, the legendary Pokemon that can grant any wish. He tells them that he wants to grant wishes for fun, but Cyndaquil and Bulbasaur are made uncomfortable by him because of how powerful he is. Tepig wants to make a wish, but eventually Cyndaquil convinces everyone that they should tell Lugia about this. They do, and Lugia brings Jirachi to heaven since he broke the rules by bringing Tepig to life. And he also brings the kids to his witnesses. This pisses Jirachi off because he wanted to grant them wishes, though they snitched on him. And then the legendaries bring them all into Legendary Heaven Court. After a lot of conversations, Cyndaquil and Bulbasaur saying they didn't wish for Tepig to come back, which pisses them off, Mew, who's a judge, decides to sentence Tepig to dying again and sending the kids and Lugia to hell. I'm dead serious. Then afterwards, Bulbasaur and Cyndaquil get separated through Giratina, who's a ruler of hell or something, brings Bulbasaur to his house and invites him to play NES games as he goes to find Cyndaquil. Once he brings Cyndaquil to Bulb, they have a reunion and get a chance to speak to Arceus for help, though it's actually Jirachi, and he tells him that he's coming down there. Jirachi tells them that they shouldn't have screwed with him and that they did a jerk thing by telling on him. But he says that he'll forgive them and restore everything if they can say sorry. Bulbasaur says sorry, but Cyndaquil is basically like everything you can because Tepig was sent to the afterlife due to dying in heaven, which Jirachi can't access without destroying everything. But Cyndaquil ticks Jirachi off enough to destroy the entire universe. Every being dies aside from Tepig, who's in the afterlife, and he meets Arceus. Arceus is casual about the universe being destroyed because it's just a video game to him that runs in the background that he can reboot at any time. And Tepig asks him who brought him back since his friends didn't. Arceus says that his dad did, and we see that his dad did wish for him to come back and to have a better life. Tepig's conflicted about if he should forgive his dad or not, but that's when the universe is rebooted. Arceus punishes Jirachi by taking away his wishing privileges and ability to fly, sends Cyndaquil's group back to Earth, and Tepig ends up moving in with Chespin. He can't find where his dad is, which bothers him a bit, but he grows to move on from this and live with it, which is where this ends. Tonal Control. All of Starters has great tonal control, but Out in the Rain does it in the most clear way. Out in the Rain is extremely absurd, as you could tell from my summary, but that absurdity is able to work with its seriousness because neither element of it overtakes the other. Arceus, the god of this world, has Kermit's voice.
One of my legendaries didn't follow the rules, and now the universe ceases to exist.
Giratina, a legendary and powerful Pokemon, lives with his mom in hell and he tortures people, and Jirachi takes nothing seriously throughout the whole episode, while at the same time, Tepig in this episode is killed, tries to escape his abusive father, and he feels as if his friends don't care about him because they never wished him back. These two things coexist and work together because of two reasons. One is because every joke feels extremely natural. The humor of a lot of scenes come from the inherent absurdity of them as opposed to straightforward jokes, which is why Arceus having a Kermit voice or Jirachi saying stuff like,
Jirachi, I wish all of us to go back home.
Can't do that because you guys are fucking assholes. Deal with it.
Come on!
is funny. But since with Jirachi is just in line with who he is, and since with Arceus is just an aspect of himself, it doesn't conflict with any of the previous serious or current serious moments. Nothing here feels like it's trying to be funny, since instead the situations the characters are put in and who they are just are. Jokes never feel like clean setups or punchlines, and instead, things are just funny because a character's just being who they are, or a situation is inherently insane and hilarious because of that and no one acknowledges it. That's why the episode can do something funny and then immediately have Tepig be killed again without it feeling jarring, and instead both funny or serious in either instance effectively. The second reason for why this tonal dichotomy actually works is because it never goes too far in either direction. Jirachi never consistently does super hilarious stuff, and the plot never gets so absurd or funny that you can't take what's going on seriously, because everything that happens makes complete sense for what the plot is. And it never gets so serious that the more absurd aspects or jokes characters use feel unnatural or weird for the tone established, as it stays within the bounds of, hey, this can get serious or funny easily, without needing for a slow tonal transition. That's what I meant when I said the show never goes too far in either direction. The only time it comes close is when Emboar is mourning the death of Tepig and he makes a wish for him to come back, and Jirachi does a little musical number as a joke during the scene where we're supposed to take, Emboar crying seriously. But it doesn't feel that weird because that's completely in character for Jirachi, and this joke, while a little jarring, doesn't last long, and he's the only one who doesn't take this seriously because of who he is. Starters as a whole does this amazingly, just like how it does with dialogue or character writing, and like how its great aspects help overcome its weaknesses, like the art style and good animation. But instead of going in depth immediately on Out in the Rain like how I usually do, and since Out in the Rain is pretty surface level like the other Cyndaquil group focus episodes, I want to do something a little more interesting. Jirachi Defense. Jirachi is said to be straight up evil by multiple characters in this episode, and I wouldn't be shocked if most fans of Starters felt the same. But I don't, because it's more complex than that, because we have to account for what we actually see after he fulfills the wishes and his initial intentions. When Emboar makes the wish for Tepig to come back and have a better life, Jirachi just does it. No strings attached, and there's never any mention that these are monkey paw style wishes or something. Given what we actually see, we can't equate him to any genie or satanic entity that's trying to ruin your life or own you via doing your wishes, because he's shown to genuinely want to grant wishes for no reason. And that's the only reason why he keeps getting in trouble. He's not torturing or trolling mortals, he's just fulfilling the wishes people want him to do. Jirachi only ever does wrong to Cyndaquil and his group because they tell on him and get him in trouble. Though from Cyndaquil and his friends' perspective, it makes sense. Jirachi is some unknown legendary Pokemon with the ability to control life and death. obviously they'd be scared. But even after Jirachi sends Cyndaquil's group to hell indirectly, he's willing to forgive them and restore every single wrong thing that he did to the best of his ability. Compared to other starters villains like Mudkip or Dr. Sylveon, Hypno, and the spirits, or the last ones, Turtwig and Scorbunny, Jirachi is the most powerful and yet the least evil when it comes to straight intent. Characters like Giratina still says he's evil though because he's so dangerous yet casual about his power. He shouldn't be reviving people when asked or do whatever people wish for just because he wants to grant wishes. So that evil label is more akin to him being dangerous, as Jirachi wasn't at all shown to be malevolent in his actions. If the author truly wanted him to be evil, then he could have just shown that the wishes are Monkey Paw-esque, but instead he basically just uses his power for whatever mortals want to wish for irresponsibly, which is how he ends up destroying the universe. It's a level of power that should be kept under control, but it's not, and so everyone sees him as evil when by intent he's just not. Conclusion. As with the last 2 episodes, there's not much to talk about in terms of death, and honestly, even though I think this episode is good, it's probably the most forgettable. You don't really have to watch it either to understand the next few episodes, as all that happens is Tepig moving in with Chespin. Aside from that, it's basically episodic with the villain and an area of this world explored that we never and will likely never come back to revisit. Wild Oranberries. This is the final canon starters episode, and it's pretty simple on top of being the shortest one. It also has a bigger focus on being more comedic, similar to the previous episodes involving Cyndaquil's group as main characters, but here's what happens in it. Wild Oranberries Summary. Cyndaquil and Bulbasaur watch Tepig fly a drone, but he flies it too high and a bird steals it. Since it's Chespin's and it was $2,000, they go into the forest where it fell to try and find it. Bulbasaur finds it, but gets attacked by the bird to then be saved by a Turtwig, a usually civilized species of Pokemon, since in this world, most Pokemon are civil but some are wild. The drone's broken, so they go to Scorbunny and Totodile's repair shop to try and fix it, but they can't because it's too high tech for them. Then Turtwig from earlier comes in, following Bulbasaur. Scorbunny thinks this is crazy because Turtwig is usually speaking stuff, but after Bulbasaur says that it defended him from the bird, he introduces Wild Oranberries to them, which is an underground ring where Pokemon send wild Pokemon to fight non-lethally for money. Tepig wants to so he can get money to fix his drone and eventually convinces Bulbasaur to let him bring the Turtwig to the fighting ring, which is run by Totodile's brother. They get in and the Turtwig seemingly gets killed by the shiny Arbok, but Turtwig jumps out of its mouth and ends its life. But since these fights aren't to the death, everyone's horrified by this and they get permanently banned from entering fights. Because of what happened, everyone's worried about Turtwig since he's dangerous, but Scorbunny still really wants to train it with Tepig so he can get money. But after Scorbunny gets mad at Totodile, Tepig says he's alright with the drone being broken, and he agrees that Turtwig should go back into the forest. Scorbunny's still obsessed with trying to train it, but then it stands up, which scares the crap out of everyone including Scorbunny, especially when it starts speaking. They go back to the repair shop and Tepig thinks that they can make money off of him because he's learning so quickly, but everyone rejects this idea and Scorbunny still decides to train it by being strict with him via shock collar when he does things that he doesn't want him to. Since this is insane, Bulbasaur takes the shock collar off and Score mentions the drone again, though everyone says that they'd like to release him into the wild. After another argument with Scorbunny and Totodile, she kicks him out and Turtwig refuses to help Score. Tepig that night decides to take Turtwig to Chespin's house so Scorbunny can't get him, and Chespin talks to him for like an hour before Tepig goes to sleep. We see that without the repair drone shop, Scorbunny doesn't have anywhere to sleep, so he goes into some kind of orphanage and sleeps there since he's actually homeless. Next day, Turtwig begins talking robotically and walking on 2 legs, which freaks out both Chespin and Tepig because he evolved so fast in one night, and he fixes the drone. Tepig thinks that Chespin did something to him, but Scorbunny comes over to try and get Turtwig again and work with Tepig, but Score sees that Turtwig got way smarter in a night and fixed the drone and realizes that he can't use him anymore to make money. Tepig's out of trying to use Turtwig for anything since the motive for getting money is gone, but Scorbunny's mad about it, and we learn that Turtwig became so smart because he was talking to Google Home all night. His main goal is to contribute to society by first buying a house, since that's what he classifies as civilized. Scorbunny and Turtwig go to Totodile's house, and in the repair shop, Turtwig puts an electric collar on Score, since he classifies him as wild for not having a house. And he wants to go into Wild Oranberries for money since he thinks that that's optimal for getting cash. Totodile comes in and sees this, but she does nothing to help, and Turtwig puts Scorbunny and Wild Oranberries to fight, which is when Totodile's brother calls Totodile to come to the ring, and that's when she and Cyndaquil's group go there. Scorbunny and Turtwig are already there and waiting extremely early before a match when a Dragonite and his Onix come in, and the Dragonite leaves his Onix with them in there, which is when Turtwig makes Scorbunny in the Onix fight. Seneco's group, Totodile and her brother come to save Scorbunny from the Onix. Once they do, the Turtwig takes a hit from the Onix, basically receives rain damage, and reverts back into being wild before leaving. Scorbunny after this goes back to the repair shop and he finds all of his stuff intact and neat because Totodile ended up forgiving him and letting him stay. Then there's an end credit scene that I think is probably non-canon where Mudkip comes back to life in a robot form and it's revealed that Turtwig is literally a robot. Then Mudkip said trained him well, which implies that he taught Chespin how to do that, which is insane. Immediate thoughts and short analysis. While I like this episode, I don't have much to say or add on to it outside of obvious things as everything's extremely clear. Scorbunny and Totodile clearly started off as friends and now, after a long time of working with each other, don't like each other because they think that they're holding each other back. Scorbunny, despite that, just took Totodile for granted, even though she's the only reason why he's not homeless. Turtwig does what he does to Scorbunny because Scorbunny treated him badly, and those are the most complicated elements, but anyone can get that. So me going super in depth like how I did for Fennekin or Mudkip in both the Rare Candy and Typomaniac sections, or even Jirachi and Out in the Rain just doesn't make sense because I won't be adding anything. Nothing to add, so on to nothing because the video's over. Final conclusion plus Misc positive realizations. Starters is one of, if not the best web series that I've ever seen, mostly because of Typomaniac and Rare Candy. It effectively mixed dark and serious themes with absurdity or well-timed soft comedy that never breaks or destroys what it's trying to do, and its characters are shockingly deep and memorable. There's a reason why even 6 years later, people still want more, though if we never get any more, I'll be fine with that. Had a great run, and I think it's fine to appreciate what we got instead of expecting more if the creator wants to leave it as it is. Hopefully you enjoyed the positive change of pace and different video style. And if you have any tips on how to better positively analyze media, then certainly give them to me because sometimes it's a bit hard to find something to say when it feels as if a media's high quality is self-evident. Nonetheless, like the video, subscribe, and if you want to see extra early videos, become a member for $3 or just for extra, become one for $1. I'll see you guys in whatever I post next.